Hi there, my name is Malachy Robinson and I'm talking to you from my lockdown COVID living room, and just tell you about myself. I work for the Irish Baroque Orchestra playing the double bass using this historical bow and this historical double bass, which I will tell you about in a moment. The double bass works just like a violin. It's simply a big violin. So you tune the strings by tightening them up here, and you choose the pitches on the strings by moving your fingers up and down the fingerboard, which makes effectively the string shorter. As you climb up your fingers, the length of the string that's vibrating is shorter as you go higher. You shorten it, and the note goes up consequently. The main differences between this historical double bass and a modern version of the same instrument, which I also play, the bow is very different. This bow is a very wide open bow with a sort of slightly convex stick. Modern bows come in, which gives a different kind of spring, but these historical bows sort of go out, which makes it a bit more like a bow for a bow and arrow. And the way you hold it is by hanging underneath it like this, as opposed to holding it on top like a violin player would. The instrument, the double bass itself, has gut strings. These strings are made out of the intestines of cattle. And this bottom one is made out of a lot of gut. You could make a huge amount of violin strings out of that fat gut string, and so it's expensive. The tuning for these three strings, this instrument has three strings. That's a common historical thing. You know this by looking at old instruments and indeed at paintings of old instruments. Three strings was very common. These days it's always four, and actually sometimes five on a double bass. And the tuning for this is a G at the top, a G at the bottom, and a D in the middle, which means you have a fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4 between the top two strings, and a fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 between the bottom two strings. But of course it's not uncommon for instruments to have different intervals between their strings. The guitar, for example, most of the strings are a fourth apart, but one pair is a third apart. So this is not uncommon. I chose the double bass mainly because I was a young teenager who hadn't yet played an orchestral instrument. I played piano and I'd done a lot of singing as a boy, and I wanted to play in orchestra. And the double bass, because I was already, I was 14 or 15 when I started the double bass, I was kind of big enough to get around one, and it was an instrument also that youth orchestras needed. So that was a good bet as a way into the orchestra. And I do like the double bass. I like that it's, physically, actually, it's lovely. You're kind of giving the thing a hug, in a way that doesn't apply to a violin, for example, or a flute. It's a big thing, it's a companion. It's also very versatile, so there's those noises out of a double bass, but there's also these noises. So you can imagine the double bass fits, and you well know it fits into all sorts of musics from all sorts of parts of the world, and that's a great thing for the instrument. So this piece, for anybody my age or older than me, certainly who lived in our part of the world, will forever be associated with the comedian Russ Abbott advertising Hamlet cigars. God.